That is the divine taste, and that's what you're striving for. You will always be striving towards completion, striving towards God, striving towards perfection. That's the divine taste.
And that, in doing so, by contemplating the divine taste, you include the Ubermensch.
It's not contemplating the divine taste. It's reaching towards the divine taste. So, like I was saying, everyone is
I
always
just mean
reaching.
doing it.
What do you mean doing it?
I just mean in general participating in the divine taste. That encompasses
Not
Ubermensch.
so now, not quite, because here's the thing. Everyone participates. Okay, here's the thing. Everyone participates in will to taste, and what will to taste is reaching for the divine taste. So now things get super complicated, nuanced, and you get down to the levels of speech, which are extremely complicated. Which is to say that will to taste is reaching for the divine taste. But there are lots of people who have no idea that they're reaching towards the divine taste, and yet they're still doing will to taste. So, for instance, um, a first grade teacher screaming at one of her students for speaking to another student in class. Okay, just a very specific example. All right, a bitch teacher teaching a first grade class, screaming at another student, screaming at one student for having fun with another student in class. All right, this bitch teacher, dude, she is striving for the divine taste in that action. To her and her warped brain, she is reaching for a better reality. She is reaching for a world in which the world will taste better, a world in which it will feel better on her brain, right? That is her divine taste, right? And so her thought texture of God, or her idea of the ideal thought texture, the will of forms, like the good, right? Her idea of God, right? That is what she is reaching for in the moment in which she screams at those children. So you don't need to understand what the divine taste is to reach for it. But when you understand what the divine taste is, then you're creating the Ubermensch. You see what I'm saying? Only when you
Seems like
understand.
there could be a
Good.
vocabulary label we could use for that.
Like what?
Something to organize that. I don't
Like what?
know. I'm just saying something
Come
to
up with a
differentiate
placeholder. Like,
between.
like literally, let's just call the word gravel. Okay, let's say the word gravel. But like, where would that
Oh,
word
what?
go?
Why? To be to There's a difference between eating nonsense stuff and then eating God, right? So like
No, that's the thing. Metaphysically, there isn't. Um,
I get
it's
that there's no. I'm saying there is like a one you should probably do it
okay. Well,
towards God rather
the
than.
the difference, the difference there would be when you're reaching towards God, you're doing an ego is to taste. And that gets super complicated too, because an ego taste is both a statement which means something, and also the framework which is reaching towards God. See, this is the problem: is they're all each other in such unseparable ways. Each one is also the other one, but each one has a specific little nuanced thing to it, which makes it special. So we're going to be getting deeper into that tonight as we go through the Voxer laws. You're going to be seeing what I mean by that. That each one includes the other one, and yet is itself in its own weird way. Um, but but to address what you're specifically talking about, um, I forgot how I was going to do that. Want to restate the question again because I don't even remember what it was.
When you eat, there's a plethora of things to eat. When you eat something, you get the Ubermensch, right? So that thing probably is God, right?
Yes, when you eat towards God specifically, when you eat
Yes.
towards God, that's when you're going to get the Ubermensch. When you're just eating for better taste, which is what most people do, and see that gets complicated because even when you're just eating for better taste, that is eating towards God because better taste is God, right? God is just the best taste. So it gets super
They're
complicated because
both they're
go ahead.
they're both going. They're both one line, but technically going in different directions.
It's not. But it really isn't even that. It's more that one's just a much shorter line because even the first grade teacher screaming at the students, she's reaching towards God. She's just really bad at doing it. You know what I mean? It's just a really shit reach. It's a very short line.
But I think there is a metaphysical separation between at least metaphysical linguistic separation between striving for and trying to devour object or something or a creation versus the creator.
No, I don't think there is. I don't see how they're different. I don't even see how labeling them as different would be productive. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't see a time
It's
in which
by
you'd need to label one without the other. When would I need to talk about what the first grade teacher is doing separately from what reaching towards divine taste is doing? At that point, I'm just creating
because
confusing
what is
metaphysical
the first grade
separation.
teacher is doing is she's jumping out into the world and trying to get into the world, the creation, and trying to control that versus trying to think on not creation, but the source of creation of God itself, which goes beyond all being.
But okay, but it's not that she should be pondering God. That's what her old framework would have been, is in relation to God, right? That's what the old concept would have been, is pondering. She should have been pondering what that first grade student was doing in relation to God, basically what you just said. And that's not what she should be doing. That's not what the new framework is.
I'm not
The
saying
new,
thinking about the
okay,
child in relation to God.
yeah.
I'm just saying I'm not that would still be participating in. I'm saying in general, the process of of trying in that situation, not trying to contemplate what the child was doing in relation to her, but instead just trying to focus on not in relation to God, but just the God itself. Hypothetically, if this first grade teacher was enlightened.
Yeah, like I said, I just don't see why we'd make that separation. It's like, it's just a bad, in my opinion, it's a bad separation to make because then you're separating things into two different categories when it's not two different categories. And you're gonna make people think that they're two different things when they're just not. It's like they both are the same thing. I don't see the difference between the first grade teacher reaching for God and the first grade teacher reaching to scream at her students. So the exact same thing. Both of them is their teacher reaching for God. And that's the lesson I'm trying to teach is the fact that even when that first grade teacher fails, and it isn't even a failure, she successfully reached for God. She successfully was an ego,
But
which was to taste. She did it. She did what she was supposed to do as a life form. She reached for God, but due to her frameworks, she just didn't reach well.
right, so I think that
So there should be a
we
label for when you
in the
don't reach well. Is basically what I'm saying. It's like, I don't think so.
well, at the very
They're
least, I'm
arbitrary
saying
differences.
I think there should be labels for what one should strive towards and labels for what should strive not, so they can clearly see what's there
There's
and
potential
what
to what
we
you're
think of.
saying. There's potential to what you're saying, but you're going to need to make it real because, like, it's too easy to tear down in the state. Like, you need some concreteness. I can argue against directly. Like, you got to label it somewhere and let me look at the thing you're labeling. I
Oh,
don't
that will
even.
come soon.
What is it?
Okay, I will in due time. I just
Um,
need to organize my thoughts, and I think I have some ideas.
okay, just try and
Okay.
rephrase it because if it's in due time, it very well may never be spoken about again.
No, I've contemplated this. I just I know I get what you're saying, and I agree. What I'm saying implies that there's two things, and I will eventually have a solution for that.
I want to ponder upon it. Hold on. You ponder upon it as well.
What about this? This is at least an analogy where life, the eating process, is equivalent to a game. Where if you're in the game, no matter what you do, you're in the game of eating God, regardless. But like all games, like let's say for example football, you can be good at that game or you can be bad at that game. If you miss the ball and you don't catch it, that's still playing football as catching that ball. But catching that ball and doing and scoring a point, that is better. That is good. That's solving, that's fulfilling your purpose. Even though you can fulfill that purpose by playing the game and being wrong and or missing or being bad, which would be reaching for nonsense rather than reaching for God. At the very least, to be a player you should
I
recognize
see.
that there is a
I
separation.
see. No, I see what you're saying. I see exactly what you're saying. Hold on. I'm building my counter argument. I guess I would say you're right. In a capacity, you're right. I disagree fundamentally on what we should do about it. You're definitely correct in that, of course, there is a difference. The difference is clear. The difference is literally the success rate, right? Like, the difference is, like you said, is whether or not you score the ball, or it would be whether or not you are reaching towards the accurate thought texture of God, the accurate divine taste, we should say. So the equivalent of a touchdown or scoring is reaching exactly towards the true conception of the divine taste. So you're definitely right in that capacity. However, I would say to try and label it, you are creating a divide which, while correct, will linguistically confuse people by creating a separation that I think is counterintuitive because you it's very difficult for people, including even me and up until recently, to understand that what that teacher was doing was reaching for God. And that as soon as you separate it and you try and separate
But I
action
think
to
we would include with the separation what we mean that it's also still
reaching towards God.
connected.
Yeah, I see, I see. Yeah, I mean, I guess that all depends on how we do it. We just got to do that well, and that will be difficult. And there are many issues which could arise with that. But if it is done perfectly, then that could definitely work. So I would say we are in pretty much agreement. Um,
Mhm.
um, but so, what were we talking about before that? Um,
This reminds me of the beginning of last year when the frameworks were just getting going, and we were just calling all the time and just creating so many different ideas
yeah, it really is a weird like jump back to the beginning.
parallel.
Yeah, yeah,
I
it
mean,
is.
I'm seeing it as like just like, oh, this is the sequel. Like last year was the first
Yeah,
movie
it is.
of
It
the
is the
experience, and now this is the
sequel.
sequel.
Yeah, that's a really
We
good way of
had the
putting it.
probably
Yeah.
I would say around the finale was probably the two sub ones. That was probably the end of the movie, and then afterwards we separated, and
Yeah.
then the next one
It,
started.
it's weird how we can feel the finale crawling up on us. Like I've been saying for the past month, even since you guys were here, I was like, I can feel a finality in the framework. I can feel something changing. It doesn't feel the same way it did before, where it was always just reaching up and up. I can feel myself reaching a sort of plateau. I can feel something changing. You know what I mean? And it's like it did change. It's very weird. It's weird that you can just feel it in the air before it happens. Um,
It was like we were magnets, and we were like feeling the attraction, and then we finally got pulsed.
Sadly, that attraction for me was White Hole, that piece of shit bitch, which misled me for a month the whole time you guys were here. Um, Stupid fucking piece. Yeah, just sort of how divine taste, everything is reaching towards divine taste. Every action is reaching towards divine taste. Divine taste is God. And you know, another thing is the thinking about divine taste in that way, where you're saying that divine taste is just the framework of God. You know what I mean? Basically, is what you're saying. It's like, like here's what I'm trying to say. It's saying what Nietzsche was saying, where, in other words, God doesn't exist as an independent metaphysical concept. God exists as the ideal of perfection. God exists as the thing in your brain which drives you towards power or the best taste. So it's like God only exists in relation to what he does for you. Is a way to think about the divine taste. I don't know. It's very interesting. Very interesting what it says. Um, Lots of things. But so yeah, the divine taste, and then so that's how the divine taste includes both the Ubermensch, and also the will to power, and in the same way that Ubermensch included a will to power, right? That's what will to taste does. Where Ubermensch was like, okay, so in reaching for the Ubermensch, you will understand the will to power, but the will to power also exists independently of the will to taste, or the will to power. It's the same thing here, where the divine taste exists independently of the will to taste, and the will to taste exists independently of the divine taste. However, when you understand them in relation to each other, is when you begin to understand reality. Which is some interesting stuff.
So saw my message. I had a beautiful lucid dream last night. I shot lightning on my fingertip, and that was really fun. Still thinking about it.
Hey, pray for me, because I'm still not getting any of those bad boys.
It's really weird. It's like I wish I could tell you one thing or another, but it's like I don't know why, but it's just like right now I'm getting them.
I feel that I will get them eventually. Like, this is another one of those statements like I was talking about before. I know that this is true for some reason. I'm gonna start talking about this more often because this is something which I've always neglected to talk about before, but it's something which I've felt a lot before in the past. But it's like, to me, it's like I've got a built-in thought texture radar where I can understand whether things are true or not just based on like how they taste. I don't know. Just based on like the thought texture taste, I can tell whether or not something's true.
Intuition.
Yeah, yes, okay, yeah. That is the literal word for it in the English language is intuition. But yeah,
That's
it
it,
is.
and specifically the word that a lot of the more spiritual people use as well.
Yeah. Well, yes, absolutely. Intuition is incredibly involved in the religious ideas, but I get massive intuition. I can just like predict the future a lot of times, and like I can feel when
Wait,
specifically I can feel when I'm making a statement which is predicting the future, and it's like like I can feel, and I've always felt this whenever you talk about lucid dreams, that it's just not the time for me right now. Like I don't even
that's
feel the need to like reach for them. It's just like those are not the goal right now. Those will come for me later as I get more spiritually enlightened, as I continue to grow my framework. Those will become something which I get, but they're not what I should be seeking right now. They're something which will be a reward in the future.
Mhm.
It's just interesting.
I feel like
Um,
since I'm getting them now, it's like I probably should be go diving into it.
yes,
Um,
I would absolutely agree
and
with that.
yeah, the one thing I know is that is Sub Zero is what's holding me back, and I know it.
That is interesting.
Cause like I really like I will remember like I will have them, but I won't remember a lot from them, and I think it's limiting my power, my memory, my control over it, just my
It'd be
dreams in general,
it'd
no
be
doubt.
interesting to see you go off of Sub Zero and then just not have them at all.
That would be fascinating.
But yeah, that is interesting. For me personally, I have an interesting relationship with Sub Zero now, where I just find myself a lot of times just not doing it. Um, and
Yeah, that's where I want to be. I've been definitely been not doing it as much the last few days.
yeah,
Probably
but
help.
it's interesting. I like it more. Um, I have a healthier relationship with it after my last Sub One experience. Um, but I don't know. It's just
But
I just don't reach for it as much anymore. It's like I'm just so
it's certainly it's a lot less magical. It's like before
yeah.
it got us to where we were trying to go, and now we're it's like we're there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it is like how we were explaining to Ryan, where it's just like, yeah, but we get so much farther than that by just existing nowadays. Another thing I was thinking about, which I always thought but never said to Ryan for some reason, is just um, you know how you a lot of the times feel like you're not ready to go into sub one, like you just feel like there's like a lack of confidence. You know what I mean? Like literally, what our religion is the solution to that exact issue. You know what I mean? It's like a metaphysical certainty which makes it where you can always walk into the fire of sub one. I don't know. It's an interesting way to look at it.
And
Um,
that and if you could handle someone, imagine what else you could handle in real life.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I'm just gonna start going up the fucking Voxer chain here. So compare different actions such as eating, music, audiobook. Okay, so eating, what it was I was listening to the Jake Paul video. Um, music, music. Um, I mean, really, they're all the same. Is what it comes down to. The interesting thing about this framework is the fact that it can be anything from talking to Peggy on the phone to eating a cheeseburger and listening to a Jake Paul video to walking through Walmart to eating mochi to talking on the phone right now, and they all have the exact same equation, and it doesn't change ever. There's never anything which I need to do different. Um, which is interesting. Um, next one is another super simple one, which is breathing is just a lifetime target. Okay, I want to go into the audiobook one. I gotta think about it though. Also, sub one audiobooks were interesting. Um, I listened
What
to
they do.
yeah. I don't know how to explain that. It was like remember how I explained the concept of framework rape? Um, it was like
Go over that one again.
it's just like a framework that rapes you. I mean, it's just it's really
Mm,
it's just super simple. It's just like a framework which you have no choice in being a part of. Um, it was
yeah.
like that. It was like a frame. It was like just the framework, same framework that I'm running now. It was a little different. It was, of course, a little bit more sub one-y, a little bit drippier, a little bit more laughing at you. You know what I mean? But other than that, it was just like the framework I'm running right now, except I had absolutely no choice, and it was being forced onto the audiobook at all times. Um,
What did it do to the story?
Nothing. I didn't feel any sort of warping. I didn't feel any sort of inability to understand the story. Um, yeah,
What was that like a sobering, like
no,
intellectually
no.
considering it?
No. Interestingly enough, watching Better Call Saul was one of the most sobering things I could possibly do. It like as soon as I started watching Better Call Saul, I just became a normal human being again. But audiobooks, both Zarathustra and um the sci-fi audiobook, both of them were fantastic. I found that they were just great things to listen to and think on, and just great. They were just great. I just felt that both of them were just great. I loved every second of both of them.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely imagine that. Better Call Saul. That's not the sub one. That's not the sub
No,
one show.
no, it is not. No, it absolutely is not. It's very interesting.
And
Great
just
piece of
like, but
art.
however, Aviator, however, would go great with it.
Oh, that's still fantastic. Such like things like that. Horrible, horrible at the moment. Hell at the moment. But also, I'm so glad I experienced it because it's such a fun thought texture to look back on. You know what I mean? I don't know.
You'd
I don't
be
know.
nowhere without that one experience.
Yeah, it's so novel. It's just so. It's such a like pretty thing on the shelf. You know what I mean? The aviator experience. Um, but but so but so yeah, the audiobook on someone was very nice. But as far as the framework goes, um, the so it's like okay. I gotta think about it. God damn it. Yeah. So I understand it as a will to taste now. I'm capable of consuming the book and understanding both that the author, what he was doing, was reaching towards divine taste with this book. He
Mhm.
was reaching towards God. Understanding that me reading the book is me personally reaching towards God. I'm reaching towards the best possible thought texture, the most delicious thought texture. And also that eating is the best thing I can possibly do. It's like there's something very interesting about that where in an ego is to taste, to eat is included. It's being said with the words and ego is to taste. As soon as you smash your left brain with that, as soon as you smack yourself over the skull with that sledgehammer of an idea, it's instantly telling you eat. Like it's a command as well as a statement. It's telling you both what you're doing, why you're doing it, what that means in context to everything else, and it's also telling you now do this, now eat. And
I
ego
see
is to
it.
taste.
I see.
Go ahead.
I see it as like an owner telling like a rabid, hungry dog that's been like gnarling on like rotten flesh its entire life, and then it's like points to like most delicious thing it could possibly eat ever, and it's like go eat that. It's like, oh, obviously I'm gonna go eat that.
Yeah, I mean, very similar to that. That's a very good way to look at it because the way I was looking at it. Oh, okay, hold on. This is complicated. So it's like this ties into another idea, dude. Every idea on Sub One is like a mess of ideas which tie into each other. Um,
Did you record your ideas? What did you do on someone
Only
to
the ones
write
on
them down,
Voxer.
or did you not?
Only the ones on Voxer. That's all I did. Um, that helped a lot. What I recommend you do is,
Oh, right, I remember that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that was a funny experience listening to you.
yeah. I'm sure it was.
I remember hearing you like an ego is to taste. Oh, damn.
Yeah. I recommend you do the same thing, and specifically, not to speak to me. Like whenever you're recording these voice messages, do not think about speaking to me or trying to phrase them to me, other than using that as a tool to help you speak to yourself. Like literally, just use it as like don't even think about the way you're wording it or wording it in a way which I can understand it at all. Literally, just think about getting it on to Voxer so that you can go back and listen to it for yourself later, and then as a second thought,
Hmm.
think about explaining it to me. You know what I mean? So I can try and ask questions and
Yeah.
help you, help you get it into words. Yeah, that. But I do highly recommend that. Anytime you have an idea which you want to remain after the Sub 1 experience, I highly recommend you throw it on Voxer because it is very liable to get lost if not. Um, but yeah, something else I was thinking about is just that like the walls of my mind have been shaped to mimic our Voxer chat because it's like that's just how I think now. Like whenever I think, I'm thinking to describe it to you, and it's very interesting because it's like that has like shaped my inner monologue. You know what I mean? It's like literally when I'm speaking, it's like I'm hypothetically speaking to you so that I can keep my words in a way where I'll be able to explain it to you later. It's very very fascinating. I don't even know how to explain that
That's
concept.
true. I've noticed the same thing and doing the same thing. I'm like, all right, I have to explain this to Ashton. So it's like a small little mini framework. It's like, all right, I'm learning this, but I have to learn it in the Ashton framework so that I can explain it to him.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It literally shapes the way your brain speaks to itself. You know what I mean? It's shaping the way your ego communicates with you. It's super super interesting. And then on top of that, I imagine it's going to be very useful for us explaining these ideas to other people in the future. Is keeping one pole that you're constantly trying to explain things to. It's perfect for keeping ideas within language. You know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm.
but what was I talking about right before that? It was uh fucking I had it on camera if I need to go back, but
The Voxer messages,
yeah, Voxer
that
messages.
one.
So, hold on, I'm just gonna. You were talking about the rabid dog flesh and the owner telling it, okay, now eat, and that reminded me of the idea that I had, which was tied in with a million other ideas, which was that so the ego is a sacrifice. So God, that goes to the tenet of the metaphysical worm, where
Well,
we
I don't know about that.
basically the tenet of the metaphysical worm is literally just what I was talking about, where it's like the worm rolling in the dirt. That's us. You know what I
Right.
mean? That like God's incredibly cruel. That like here's the way I was really thinking about it was that like if God were a human, what he did was horrific. Like if you could place human morals on God, him creating infinite genocides and infinite hells just so that he could feel them and feel good. You know what I mean? Basically, what he's doing is the equivalent of us simulating entire other people for a TV show. You know what I mean? Their lives, their miseries. You know what I mean? All of their lives, them getting raped and living and dying and watching people around them, the world crumble, doing all of that for our entertainment. That's essentially the moral equivalent of what God is doing. And we are those pawns for him to taste. You know what I mean? And it's like that's what it's like if you think about it from the human perspective, and that's true. And then you can think about it from God's perspective, and from God's perspective, it's just it's existence. You know what I mean? It's thrashing. I guess is the way you can put it. It's the only option. You know what I mean? It's reaching towards beauty. It's reaching towards difference. It is existence itself. It's love. You know what I mean? It's infinite love. It's wanting more, always wanting more, and loving everything that you have. To God, there aren't these human moral standards. You know what I mean? It literally, it doesn't even work like that in his mind. You know what I mean? Of course, there's no human moral standards of good and bad. It just is, and the beauty of what it is to be and how much more you want to be. You know what I mean? That's all God thinks of it as. And
The way I've seen good and bad is like I imagine as like from the human perspective, we see good and bad as if we were like sitting at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. What if we took a bird's eye view and they're good is one wall and bad is the other wall? But if we took a bird's eye view, we would see it's only one canyon.
another way is to is to think about it where it's like, ah, damn, I lost it. That one's a bit too complicated for me, I think, right now with my language. Let me try again. I'll think about it. Yeah, I'll drop it. It's not good enough, and I'm gonna spend 10 minutes fucking working out the linguistic fucking effects of that. But so, back to what we were talking about before, where essentially, of course, good and bad being referential. That's a classic concept. But truly understanding, like, first of all, how bad it is from the human perspective, like how morally abhorrent it is, and then understanding it from oh yeah, that's I guess what I was gonna say is basically um that is it worse to not exist at all? Is it morally worse if God had the choice between existing and all of the good and all of the bad, and between that choice and the choice of not existing at all? Really, morally, which one's worse? from the human perspective is another way to think about it. Where it's like even from the human perspective, you can rectify it from that position of like, well, at least God is, and He chose to be, and isn't that